Professor Jim, and welcome to... Well, let's get into that before we start. As you could see from the opening credits, our name went through a lot of revisions. I'm going to walk you through why. The original name was Professor Jim's Christmas Guide to Creating Non-Offensive Films. Now, obviously, that could not stand. The first thing we had to do was get rid of the word Christmas, because it is a very offensive and hurtful word. Not everybody celebrates Christmas, and the people who don't shouldn't be forced to deal with or hear or have to acknowledge that the holiday exists or that that word exists. It is honestly my most sincerest hope that one day that word is eradicated from the English lexicon altogether. But until that day comes, we must all do our part to not say it as much as possible. I attempted to replace it with holiday, but that is almost as bad. Not everybody celebrates holiday, and those of us who do shouldn't make those of them who don't feel bad for not celebrating anything. So holiday is completely unacceptable as a word choice. It's there. I then decided on December, which is also bad. Not everybody confirms to our idea of a 12-month calendar, nor chooses to use the names of the months as put forth by society. Therefore, who are we to tell them that the month is December? That is wrong, offensive, and elitist, and it needs to go. I then got rid of Professor because, well, it is also very elitist. Who am I to throw the fact that I have a title around in other people's faces? Those who don't have titles don't need to be reminded of the fact that they don't have a title. Nor does me having a title make me better than anyone else. This is something that I am very passionate about, to the extent that I actually had a student kicked out of North Pool Community College last week. And by kicked out, I of course mean expelled, because she had the audacity to insult her fellow students by calling me professor in class. That is not only unacceptable, but completely rude and dismissive of her fellow students. And I fought tooth and nail to get her expelled for her crimes. Finally, I got rid of the word Jim, because who am I to take ownership of anything, even ideas that I have, that is wrong. And everything should belong to everybody at all times. So I got rid of the possessive. It's no longer Jim's. I don't own it. It's Guide to Making Non-Offensive Films, which is really what everybody should strive to do at all times, in all ways. I have a couple of main points I want to hit on in this video, and I hope you guys can come along with me on this journey. First up, I think it's important that we talk about context is not important. When attempting to avoid making offensive films, you must not fall into the trap of thinking that context has any merit, because it does not. The perfect example of this is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Now, let's talk about why the movie is offensive to begin with. It promotes sexism, i.e. the dad telling the mother that she can't go and look for Rudolph. Who is he to tell her that she can't look for her son? He has no right to tell her that. She can look for her son or leave her son to die as she well chooses. That is not the father's place to tell her anything. And that alone honestly should be cause enough for us to round up every copy of Rudolph and destroy it, so that no one ever is forced to see that offensive material ever again. But if that's not bad enough, and I honestly believe it is bad enough, the movie also is a strong advocate for bullying. The other reindeers and Santa and everybody pick on Rudolph relentlessly throughout the entire film. Now, the reason I say context is not important is because anyone who watches Rudolph with even a child's comprehension level, seeing as the movie was made for children and children have always understood what the movie was actually about, understand that the movie is using these examples of bullying in the context of the movie to illustrate that bullying is bad and that you should never judge anyone for being different or a little weird, because they too are useful and helpful to society, and they're not really that different than you and I. And that bullying doesn't solve anything. But despite the fact that that's what the movie is trying to portray, and that even a child can understand that, we must only look at the movie from an outside perspective as if we have no intelligence of our own, hear them bullying, and then assume that the movie promotes bullying, and thus ban it. That is how society has decided to function. And so that is how we need to function. Because again, you should never offend anyone ever. And as far as who's to say what is offensive and what is not, the brave warriors on Twitter have determined what is offensive for us, and we must heed their call. Now, moving on from context, we have our second point. And our second point is that you don't make a movie for today's audience. And by that I mean you don't make it conforming to today's morals or social norms. You don't use today's expressions and slang. That you just don't do it. What you do, in fact, is you have to think about what society will be like 40 plus years from now, and make the movie based on those norms, those standards, and using their language. A perfect example of something that didn't do this, well, not a movie, was a song, Baby It's Cold Outside. Now, if you take it in the context of when it was created, you know, it's attempting to illustrate how oppressive society was towards women and not allowing them to explore their own sexuality. She, of course, is talking to a gentleman, and it's like, I want to stay, but people will judge me, and, you know, I need an excuse to make it okay, and you gave me this weak drink, because, of course, back then, what's in this drink was an expression meaning that the drink tasted, the drink had no kick to it. It was light or non-alcoholic. That's all what the song was about then. But we cannot acknowledge that because that is wrong. What we must acknowledge is how people view it today. That she's trying to leave, he's forcing her to stay, and that he put a drug in her drink so that she wouldn't have the will to leave, because that is what people today think the song means. Therefore, it is what the song means, because we can't judge it by its time, we judge it by today. And that's very important to remember, that even if you do something that is trying to empower or shed light on something that's kind of wrong, if it goes back to the Rudolph thing, context doesn't matter. So you can't use context to explain something. You can never explain something by illustrating something bad. People cannot be taught. That is wrong. Attempting to teach people a lesson is offensive. Please don't do it. The last example, the last method, if you will, that I want to talk about today is that you cannot use logic in your film. It's wrong, and people don't like to be shown logic as an example of anything. The perfect example of this, of course, would be Frosty the Snowman. Now, we of course all know that there's nothing more offensive than hurting children, and the sicko director of this film decided to put children in shorts and short skirts in the snow. Now, they could have gotten sick, they could have had a cold, they could have died. It's not right. Just for the sake of art, children should not be put in such dangerous, hostile environments. They should have been given pants and, well, pants mostly. And it doesn't matter, honestly, that they're animated in cartoons, because it's the principle of the matter. It's still very offensive. And it hurts a lot of people's sensibilities, and we need to be understanding of that and accepting of that. So we cannot, as a society, condone animated children in shorts. That is wrong and offensive. And like Rudolph and Baby It's Cold Outside, all copies of that film must be rounded up and destroyed and erased from the lexicon, because we can never mention them again, because they are so offensive. I think that the basic understanding of what we've come to in today's lesson is to don't create anything that can even be perceived now or 40 plus years from now as offensive in any way. And if you have any questions, then the Brave Warriors on Twitter will be more than happy to answer your questions as to what is and what is not acceptable. I am Jim, and I am deeply and humbly sorry about all the offensive things I've shown and did in this video, and I beg for your forgiveness. Yes, and thank you. Have a good day.